Um, as you can see on the picture there, we're right on Lake Wisconsin, and I always say we have 50 houses watching what we do every day, so we do have to play by a little bit of different set of rules than most, but it's a very beautiful location, and we do get in the lake some. We have a boat, and my parents have a pontoon boat, and so we enjoy that. And I often say that I'm cheating because of that, because I see that firsthand always in the lake. And when people are farther away from the water and don't see where their soil is going, where their nutrients are going, and what it's doing, that's why I feel like I'm cheating sometimes. So you can go to the next screen, I guess. So that's just a little bit about everything that we do, I guess. On the left-hand side of that screen, the top picture there is a picture from 1953 of this farm. And as you can see, there wasn't many, if any, houses on the lake at that time. And that island out there is called Bell Island. And a local farmer used to take sheep out there in a flat bottom boat and let them graze. And it was basically like a park out there. You had everything chewed off. Right now, it's extremely full of poison ivy. It's not even fun to go on at all. Left side of that left picture is a heavy use area, and I will talk about that later when we get to grazing cover crops and winter stuff and spring grazing. In the middle is just a picture of them grazing some corn stalks through the snow just to show that they can do that. On the right there is a sign that says topsoil for sale. And then I had my daughter make it look just like a phone number. It says JUSTKIDDING, just kidding. And underneath there we said, we caught it, we're going to keep it. And I'll talk just a little bit about that right now, and just so I don't forget. We did a waterway on 1,100 feet of our property where water comes through from other properties. And over the last 50 years, our family has caught 1,600 cubic yards of topsoil coming from, tillage and other things, mostly tillage, I guess. And it's a really cool number. That's 100 quad axle dump trucks full of dirt. The scary number is what we didn't catch, how much we couldn't stop. So that was something we did back in 2020, I believe we dug that waterway out. Bottom there is a picture of our farm during one of the events we've had. I guess on the way bottom is a picture of the family. It's my kids and their significant others, and there's one of my granddaughters in there, and there's actually, that was taken a little bit ago, there's 2 more grandchildren. So top of the other side, the right side, is a winter grazing event that we had back in 2023. And the interesting part about that is there was a professor, UW professor, retired from beef, and got to be friends with him. Dan Schaefer's his name. And when I sent him the flyer for that, he had been a beef professor at the UW for a long time. And he said, Ron, I've never been to a winter grazing event. I just thought that was kind of cool that, we were doing something that, there's been other field days and different things, but it was a really good day. I had that 4 other farmers talk. You'll see them later in this video. And I think we had 60 some people here that day. It was a really good day. On the right side of there is advocacy. We ended up having the Wisconsin Senate Ag and Tourism Committee and some of the congressional committees out here just to show them what we're doing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later also. Next, on the left in the middle there is about our virtual tour at World Dairy Expo last year. And I guess just a bunch of other things. The bottom right, we had a soil health nexus tour out here last year. We had a bunch of extension agents all over the Midwest and just showed them what we do and different stuff. Bottom there, just to the right, there's a skid steer, and that's my son-in-law standing there, and that's how much topsoil our family caught over 50 years there. That was quite a find, I'll say, quite a nice to keep all that topsoil on our land. So you can switch to the next screen. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds, 15 to read this screen, and then I'll be right back. Oh, as you can see there, uh, by doing bedding pack and different things, lose a lot of nitrogen. That's one of the things that pushed me to do more of the wintering and the winter grazing corn stalks and different things like that. Was this here? You know, when I read this when I was sitting in that meeting, I thought, wait, we spend all this time and diesel and equipment running, making corn stalks, making wheat straw, whatever, and then we spend all that time daily putting in bedding. And then in the spring, we spend a bunch of time and a bunch of diesel and a bunch of equipment again, hauling that manure out only to have half of the nitrogen that came out of the back of the cow. And so that's really what started changing, started us putting the animals back on the land, I guess I'll say, on the real crops. You can go to the next slide. This is something Kim Meyer made up for us. Kim Meyer runs Dane Demo Farms for Dane County Land and Water Conservation Department. It just shows a little bit about, you know, what we do and kind of the year-round rotation. And so obviously the cover crops are going to fit into that, but also crop residue fits into that pretty well. So you can go to the next screen. So this is, well, this might be a little out of line. This is planting green. Fry was flown on. So there, you know, some of the things today we're talking about drones flying on seed. Well, you can definitely do that on soybeans, especially if you have a wet year. The one thing I would definitely recommend is to have the seed on the ground before any leaf drops off of the soybean plant. If you're starting to see yellow, you better have that seed on the ground so that all those leaves drop, cover it up. We've had really, really good success. We also have shied away from it in dry years because the gravel knolls, the leaves drop way sooner, right? And so if those beans shut down and drop their leaves, then we have to go out there with the drill and fill in the knolls. And so then we've kind of just backed off of that a little bit, unless you have a really wet year. Then we, you know, we've been just drilling it later. But as you can see, we had a beautiful stand there, planted corn into there, killed it probably a few days later, up to a week later maybe. We'll see some of this later on in the video also, and about how much it protects our soil. One thing I will mention, in a dry year, you can definitely get burned by not killing it soon enough. 2023 was a prime lesson for us for that. Just, you know, you kind of got to play it by ear. You got to adapt. If it's super dry, you might not want to let it get this big. You might not want to let it get to where it heads out, and so you can roll or crimp it. Just, you know, if it's super dry and calling for dry, you might want to knock that stuff out earlier. Yeah, you won't be planting green, but you still have a lot of protection on your ground. And then, you know, this is cover crops 101. I mean, it's protecting our soil big time. You can go to the next screen. So this was after wheat. This is a multi-species. You can see that was planted August 17th of 2019. The photo was September 23rd. We were not able to graze or mechanically harvest this. It was a very wet year, and we ended up just leaving it, which seemed like a waste, honestly. If you have cattle and you see how much feed you can get out of this and put the manure and the nitrogen from their urine right back on the soil, it definitely seems like a waste. But there's benefits of leaving it also. And so you can go to the next slide. Oh, this is a video. Ooh. Are you going to be able to play that? Ty or Denise, do you know?
I cannot play this video.
So why don't you describe it then, Ron, a little bit then. Sorry.
All right. So yeah, this is cover crops planted after a demonstration area, not actually after a wheat field. But in this video, the cow, there's a full-grown Holstein cow, dry cow, comes out of that, and you know, it's tall enough that you can't even see her until she pokes her head out of there. And so there's just a lot of feed value there, a lot of really good stuff. This is probably a 20 or 30 species mix. As you can see, we graze it pretty tight. I move a fence every day. And so I also move a back fence every day so that they don't always put their manure in the same corner or along a fence or whatever. I try to spread out their manure very well. So as you can see on the ground there, there's quite a bit trampled into the ground. Now there's definitely some stuff in here that will come back. There's rye, there's alfalfa, or not alfalfa, there's clovers, white and red. Some of that stuff will come back. It's definitely knocked down pretty hard. This video, I believe, was taken October 25th of 2021. And, there'll be some stuff come back. I know people want to take half, leave half. I always think that the more they eat, the more they poop. And so I get just as much, it's best form of recycling, I guess is what I always say. Because they're eating it and they're dumping it right back on the ground. So you can go to the next screen. This is the one that should have been after the field that got left in 2019. This is a picture of the field the next year. So 2020, we killed it off in the spring, planted corn. Never got into interseed anything. I was in there spraying to clean up a few, what I would say, escapes. And I made one pass along our wheat field because the wind was in the right direction that day, so it wasn't blowing onto the wheat field. And as I was folding up the sprayer, I started looking around and I was like, well, these aren't weeds, these are cover crops. And so I just let them go. And in the fall, this is what we had, We had corn stalks that green stuff was growing, and this is the ideal goal when you're trying to interseed, is to get something, or my ideal goal, I should say, to get something green in there that I don't have to feed a bale of hay every day when we graze corn stalks. So normally when we're grazing just corn stalks, after we combine, I will roll a bale of hay out each day, ideally on what they've already grazed. And then they have the option of eating that hay or going to the corn stalks. And so you'd be surprised, some of those dairy heifers will walk right over top of this beautiful hay and go right to the corn stalks. And so if you can get this a success, which I'm not going to lie, we've very much struggled with it. Our best successes have been complete accidents. I wouldn't have to feed the hay. They'd be out there eating the corn stalks, the corn husks, and eating some green with it. I wouldn't have to supplement feed anything. So that's kind of the goal. Very hard to get there, I'm not going to lie. Next screen, please. So this is a picture from last fall, actually, November 26, 2024. We learned from our mistakes, right? So I called Premier Co-op here. I was going to get some seed in August of 24 to plant multi-species after wheat. And I called down and I asked for some peas and oats. Oh, he said, I don't have any peas and oats. I got some peas and triticale. And I said, can't you send it back? I don't really want that. Well, he said, I'd rather not. I said, fine, I'll take it. So we planted, I think 50 some bags of that. And guess what I ordered for this year's seed? Peas and triticale, because this held on so much longer than the oats. By this time, November 26th of last year, the oats was pretty well brown, pretty well gone. But that triticale was beautiful yet, as you can see there. And so sometimes just trying stuff, maybe because of an accident, maybe because it's what's available, is not a bad thing, because I like the triticale. It is from what I understand, it was a spring triticale. I mean, Albert Lee can definitely help us out on that topic, I'm sure. Cattle love this. And I graze this about the same way as that earlier picture. It was supposed to be a video. They eat a lot of it and they trample the rest down. And once we're done grazing this cover crop, then we will start, or grazing all of our cover crops that we can graze, I should say. Then we will start bale grazing, bale feeders. But you want to start in the farthest corner away from where you enter with the tractor. We take bales out every day. You'll see in a little bit here how we do that. Some people I know do bale grazing where they have them all set out there. We do mostly baleage. And so we feed sometimes up to 6 bales a day in this field for 200 head. It's divided in half. There's a group of 100 on each side of this 10-acre field. But what I'm getting at with driving to the farthest corner is when they put their waste out there, especially if there's any snow, their cow pie will protect anything that's underneath it, the snow, the ice, and it gets very bumpy driving across that because as other things melt, that stays up high. And so if you're driving your tractor, you're bouncing over all them, almost like a mushroom. So that's why I say start in the farthest corner, work your way back. You don't have to drive over top of all that stuff. Once again, there's 25 species in here, I think. We had a field day last year in October. People asked what my main goal was. Is it soil health? Is it animal feed? I said, I don't really know. I guess I'd probably lean towards the animal feed, but I'm not afraid to throw whatever I have left or whatever the co-op has that they want to get rid of. Definitely throw some sunflowers in there. People love that when they bloom. A few years ago, as part of this project, in the end here, you'll see with Sand County Foundation, we had sunflowers right next to County Highway, and it was in 30 plus years of doing all this conservation stuff, no tilling, rotational grazing, everything, cover crops, far and away the most positive feedback ever got back out of any one single practice. I had farmers calling me saying, hey, what do you all have in there? What is going on? What are you doing? Them sunflowers. And I had people texting me and saying, hey, can I take pictures in your field? And I said, absolutely. Can I take a few? Absolutely. A neighbor lady right next door, they like kale. Well, there was kale in that field. And she called me one day and she said, is it okay if I take some of this along the edge? I said, take all you'd like. And so she loved the sunflowers. They love the sunflowers, but they also love the kale. So just tossing everything in there, get a little different biology going on a lot of different things, makes a huge difference. Next slide. Yeah, you're not going to be able to play this either, are you?
No,
Yeah.
unfortunately, no.
So this is a news clip from Channel 15 in Madison, Wisconsin. And so if you type in excessive rain can affect farmers, I'm going to hold on a little bit here. Excessive flooding can affect farmers. Channel 15 in Madison, WMTV. They called me last summer, and they wanted to come out and do a story on all the flooding. And I said, well, honestly, because of all the stuff we do, we don't have as much of an issue with the flooding. Talked to him a little bit, and he said, give me your address. You've sold me. I'm coming. And so in this video, there is, you can see there, that was rye we had cut off. But we had 7 inches of rain in 24 hours, including 2.5 in 1 hour the night prior to that. Night prior to the, in that 24 hours, I guess I should say. And one of the fields that we had rye and planted green into, soybeans into, is in this clip. And you can see that there was so much water running off that it actually knocked the rye down. But the soybeans were all still there. And the residue that came out of the field was just residue, no dirt in it whatsoever. And so I said, if that would have been a tilled field, you would have definitely had soil moving out of there. In fact, we had a neighbor, some that runs onto our land, that had tilled it, and it actually covered up some of our corn because of the soil running off the field. Basically killed some of our corn because it flowed on there and settled down on it. So basically just talking about cover crops and about tillage practices. And I guess we'll go to the next screen. So just to show a little bit about grazing in the winter. One of the things that I do, and I said earlier about how I move a fence every day, you can see on the right picture there, that's where they were yesterday. Well, if you let those animals have that whole field, they are going to trample down a lot of that snow, and that's going to freeze down, and the cattle are not going to really have very good access to it. And also you'll have, waste, poop and pee on the corn stalks that they will not eat. Also, by doing it this way, you spread out your manure so much better. As I said earlier, cows will go back to the corner where they know where they're going in every day. So we let our cows in every day and give them some grain, and they get their water in the yard. But if you don't put up that back fence to keep them from that, that's where they're going to be laying down every day. And so by moving this fence, we really, really spread out our manure. And also they can dig through that snow much better, where if it's trampled down and froze down, they'll have a much harder time getting it. Same deal. Once this is gone, once the corn stalks are all grazed off, then we'll start bale grazing in that field. Once again, working from the farthest corner and working your way back. If it gets too muddy, we will pull them off. I showed on that very first screen, I think, or the second one, about a heavy use area that we have. And so we will pull them off the land, partly because of the 50 houses that are watching us every day, right? We have to play by a different set of rules. But I definitely recommend having a sacrifice area or a plan to do something when inclement weather comes. If you get huge rain and the frost is coming out of the ground, you can destroy a field pretty quickly. And if you have a plan to have maybe you have some bales set up for bale grazing in a spot on a knoll or somewhere that they're at least going to not destroy the whole field. It's definitely worth your time to move those fences. If the ground is too froze to get the post in the ground, I carry a cordless drill with a cement bit in it. And it doesn't take much at all to drill a little bitty hole and stick the post in. I will tell you, there's days you can put the post in the ground. Like when there's that much snow and if it isn't froze solid underneath, you can put the post in the ground, but you might not get it out the next day, because if that freezes in, it can be very hard to get the post out. We're carrying a cordless drill with a cement bit. Boom, boom. Very simple. You can move it very easily. You can go to the next slide. Oh, so these are the windbreaks, and this is how we bale graze. And so on the left there, you can see there's our portable windbreaks. I actually bought them from someone down in Palmyra, Wisconsin, I believe. Had been thinking about doing something similar, just never had the time. Saw these and was like, yes, I am buying them. And so we moved them as needed. There'll be a lot of days where other cows will not even use them as protection. But then there'll be a week in a row where you move them every day, because if the wind shifts directions, I try to put an arrow into the wind is what I'll try to do. And also this again moves your manure around, because I said, if you have trees, a shelter belt or woods or whatever, that's a very good place for cattle to get out of the weather. But if you let them have that every day, they are going to put more of their waste in there than you need. And there are a lot of days where they do not need this wind protection. And so if you have trees, if you could put a fence around it and only allow them access in there when it's bad, when they need it, you can spread out your manure so much better this way. It's crazy. So these are 2 wheels and a hitch, and so we can just move them wherever we want with the loader when we're out there putting the bales around. As you can see in the front of that picture, that's where the feeders were the day before, and the cattle will generally lay where those feeders were the day before. We always try and move the feeders onto new, clean ground, I'll say, and I try and leave it far enough away that where they stand mostly and where they pack down real hard like that, I don't want them doubling up the manure. One of the other things is we never put the bales or the windbreaks in a place where water will travel. There are a couple days of the year that I really don't like at all, and that is when the ground is froze and the snow is melting. And those are a couple days a year usually where I cannot infiltrate all the water on our land. We do have a 660-foot, basically rotational grazing paddocks that tries to catch some of it. I'm sure it did about 2 weeks earlier. And they were like flabbergasted. Wait, you can do this? Yes, this is what's called planting green. And so, they learned from being out there and seeing that, and having Dennis talk, having Jamie talk, having the Sauk County people talk. Todd Rittman from Columbia County was there and talked. So I recommend doing this to any political people you can, just to show them what we're doing, show them why we're planting these cover crops and why we're no-tilling and why we're rotational grazing. They were very, very happy to be out here that day. I was able to testify at the Capitol a couple days earlier this year in 2025. And in each of those sessions, there was someone at that session that was at our farm last year. And so it was very good for me to be able to talk about that and those people to be able to understand it. And hopefully we can do that again and have more politicians out to understand what we're doing. So we can go to the next slide. Same deal with this. This is Neil Martin, Charlie Crave, and I got to go to DC in May of this year to do some advocating for Dairy Forage Research Center and for NRCS about what we're doing, why we're doing it, why those things are so important to continue doing what we're doing. And so hopefully it did some good. We'll see what happens. You can go to the next slide. So this is the thing we're doing about advocacy, education, whatever you want to call it. That picture there was actually the first of the conservation days / nights by the lake in 2021. You can see in the foreground of that picture, there's some different demonstration plots, including on the left, grazing cover crops. And then there was planting green, and I think it's underneath that other picture there, but there was a big manure tank, low disturbance manure injection, got all that stuff. There was a soil pit there. That's Jamie in there. People love that. People, love seeing what 30 some years of conservation stuff can do to your soil. So it was very good. We can go to the next slide. So this is what kind of came out of that. The first year in 2021, we did it for farmers. We had other farmers there. We had other farmers speaking. We started Conservation Night by the Lake in 2022, and that was to educate non-farmers. That's what we do, is invite non-farmers to this. And last year was at another neighbor's, Corn Crosses, Wargo Acres, right over here. Actually, next week, it's going to be at Lochner Dairy, just another one of the farmers in our producer watershed group. And you would not believe the comments, the replies on the surveys that we got from non-farmers. They had no idea that most of us were doing this. This was like I say, was at our farm, but all the other farmers got to lead groups around to different sites on our farm. And in between the sites, they got to talk about what they do on their farms. And it was a huge success. I had it last year, having it again, like I say, just coming up next week. Or if you can get something like this going and educate the general population, it's unbelievably good how much momentum is out there now. And the more people we can teach, the better. You can go to the next slide. There's a couple things here that we've been involved in and that you could just search. This was the Match Made in Heaven, Greenland's Blue Waters thing. It was about getting animals back on the row crop land, getting ruminants back out on the row crop land. So you can search that. There's a lot of, not just us, I think there were 6 states involved, lots of different farms, lots of different case studies. This is just ours, but there's lots of different ones, and you can definitely go and check that out, and a wealth of information on there. You can go to the next slide. Same with this. This was Sand County onto greener pastures with rotational grazing. It was a study they did. Those 4 farms, like I said earlier, I had those guys all talk at our place that day, and I guess Roman Miller, who's a grazer, not in this picture, but he spoke that day at our farm at the winter grazing event. You can go and search this. Once again, tons of stuff out there. You can see what us guys all did. There's some pretty cool videos in there from all of the farms involved. Definitely go and check that out for more information. You can go to the next slide. I said before about the momentum. The momentum about the good things are crazy. This was an interview I did after our virtual tour at the World Dairy Expo last fall in October of 24. And so I heard from different people that was the first ever virtual tour on a grazing farm. I don't know that that's true. But the momentum that came out of that was very good also. This was a podcast or an interview, I guess I'll say, that I did after the virtual tour with Midwest Farm Report. You can go and search that and listen to that. We actually just decided with World Day Expo yesterday that we will be having the All Good Things booth again, and it's basically all about it's conservation conversations. It's the shirt I have on right now. Just talking about good things that are going on in farms, and we got a new spot this year for the booth outside in a pretty heavy traffic area. Dane County Land and Water, Marie Reboyan will have the Dane County rainfall simulator there that will try and run different times throughout the day. If you have never seen a rainfall simulator, search it out. It is an eye-opening thing. So you can go to the next slide. That's it. So thank you for your time. Thanks for everyone else on this today that's sharing and we're all learning from. I love learning from people in other areas, just seeing what they're doing in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. You can see my emails on the bottom there. If you want to contact me, go for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ron. Yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah, I got a couple questions here. So you mentioned that mix was like 20, 30 or something like that. What for your cover crop mixes, what would you say is probably like the sweet spot with the amount of species in that mix, and what's a must have in your mixes?
Well, less than that. Like I said, I'll just toss in whatever. I don't care. One of the things where you can get a lot of species in a hurry is if you buy a mix. Like I'm sure you guys have mixes. You start throwing that in and one from a different company, you can bump your species number up really quick. I would say 10 is fine. I would say you can do just rye if you're going to plant green into it next year. But if you're going to graze it, especially if you're going to graze it as tight as I do, you definitely want something that's going to overwinter, something that's going to come back. If you do the take half, leave half, yeah, you can get by with a lot less of an overwintering thing then because you have a lot more, I'll say, living roots there. So yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you want to do. I would definitely recommend the sunflowers. That is a big bonus. A friend of mine, Darren Yankee from out behind over by Sauk City, has been planting it for years, and I never heard him talking about that. But I just tossed that in one day because Co-op had a bag of sunflower seeds sitting there, and it will always be in now, at least in the multi-species. If we're planting rye in the fall, I'm not going to plant sunflowers, of course. But, after the wheat's off here in a week or so, I'll definitely plant sunflowers, and it's just a really good way to attract attention and positive attention, I'll say.
Yeah, no, that's a good. I know that's been kind of a big thing recently that I've experienced here at the seed house is a lot more people coming in to get sunflowers for just the looks, but also then they realize some of the benefits are they have that nice taproot there. They get nice and tall, so you get a lot of biomass up top, and then that taproot helps with compaction and everything. You don't realize it. It's just, yeah, it looks pretty, but that can have a mean punch on your soil health and everything and compaction. So, but yeah, and then you said you were talking about when you're winter grazing and everything that you don't want to have too much out there and pack down the snow and everything. Do you give uh the cattle a little more space than you would normally in the paddocks, or do you just kind of keep it the same as you would in the summertime?
Well, we'll give them more space, but I will put up a back fence. And the back fence is what I call to keeps them from putting all their waste in that one corner. Definitely give them more room. I guess I should clarify, they are not grazing in the winter on our rotational grazing paddocks in the summer. We do not do that at all. Not that you can't, but we have enough row crop acres around, especially around that we can get to with our cattle. they're always on the row crop acres in the winter. Yes, we'll definitely give them more. Once you're done with the initial grazing of either cover crops or crop residue, then I usually don't have a back fence up anymore because they know they're coming in once a day. And in the morning, they'll be there by the corner. So as long as you bring them in soon enough, once they're in and back out for the day, they will not lay by that corner until the next day. They got it figured out pretty quickly. And so then they have a huge area and they can walk around. Like I said, they'll mostly lay down where the bales were, but they will also bed down right in the snow also. And it's amazing. You can see in the pictures there how clean they are. That heavy use area that we have, huge benefits for that. One of the drawbacks is they will definitely get dirtier on that heavy use area with us bedding them than they will out in the field.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's nice. And then it was kind of interesting to see that portable windbreak that you got. Like, how big is that? And are you planning to get more or what?
We have 6 of them right now. I don't know that I'll ever get more. I may. I mean, they're about 9 foot high, anywhere from 20 to 24 feet long. I did not build them. The person that did a phenomenal job. If you want me to send you pictures, if you want to come to my farm and look at them, I tell everyone that he did a phenomenal job. I keep harassing NRCS that they need to cost share them because they'll cost share a tree line, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can spread your stuff out so much better. So, and as you can see, there's openings between the boards. I don't know if Will did that on his own or if he found something online. He did a phenomenal job designing them. I will tell you that. And I mean, you can find different ones online. I know some people do bales for a windbreak, but there again, if you don't move it, you're going to have more manure in one spot than you want. And so the portability of them is just amazing. It's very cool.
Yeah, from what and I don't know if I asked you this before on that and everything. What's if for someone like you mentioned you're going to like rural area expo and all that stuff, someone just a farmer that's getting out, someone that's just starting out, trying interested in fall or winter grazing, what's some tips and tricks that you would recommend that they do or look into or any equipment and everything, just help them kind of get started on the best foot?
I'm glad you asked that question because there's one other thing I'm going to cover here. Like I said, our best successes have been full-blown mistakes. Where we had that onto greener pastures research that time, it's a half-mile long field, 18 acres. We did not graze it. It was so wet. I also had buckwheat in there. And this was planted after the wheat the summer before. And people told me over the winter at conferences that the buckwheat won't grow back. I was like, okay, we're going to find out the hard way. Well, by the time we got there to put the nitrogen on, our second pass of nitrogen, it was too tall to get through. And there was buckwheat everywhere in there. So I didn't spray it and I did not add the nitrogen. In the summer, I walked out there and there was chin high buckwheat in there. And I was fretting big time to see what this would yield. Super pleasantly surprised. Now, on a sand knoll, we have a little bit of everything for soil. Sand knoll, there was some that was 80 bushel. But on the better soil, we had 230 bushel of corn in there. It did not have its extra nitrogen. I was pretty darn happy with that. That was an absolute mistake. That's what it was. I think if you're going to do the interseeding, do it early. Get it. If you can get seed to soil contact, that was talked about also, I think, today. That makes a big difference. Is priceless, I'll tell you that. But I've had it where we spun seeded on when we were side dressing nitrogen. You go out there in August, I had 2-inch tall clover everywhere. It was beautiful. By the time we got to the field with the combine in October, there was no sign the clover had ever been.
Right, it's good.
And
It's
then the
good.
worms ate it, or if the worms ate it, I don't. But play around with a little bit of different things. Seed to soil contact is big. And the one thing I was going to say is we are switching to doing snaplage this fall. We did ground ear corn in the summer. for pasture because I really like the cow to slow down the rate of passage of their manure.
Mm-hmm.
In the winter, we usually did shell corn. We're going to switch to snaplage. I've been kind of thinking about this for a while, but my goal is to seed rye with the corn head on the chopper as we're chopping snaplage. So I want to shoot it out on the ground at the
Okay.
tips of the snoots. And then all
All
the
right.
trash, all the residue is going to sit on top of that. I can graze it right away if I want. Yes, the cattle may eat a little bit of seed, but they're also going to stomp some in. They're going to poop on it. And hope, but about doing it that way is I get, that's 35, 40 days ahead of when we be picking
Yep.
your corn or shelling you can do earlier, obviously.
Mhm.
So I'm actually hoping to get a graze off at that fall. I'm actually hoping to graze it in spring before we plant the soybeans, but I will not do the real small areas like I do the mob grazing. I'm going to let them have the whole field and probably not even let them lay down in there. Let them in there for an hour, hour and a half, yank them out of there. Maybe do it again at night, same type of thing.
Okay.
If nothing else, it might keep the rye down a little bit. I've kind of went away from trying too much of the interseeding. It's if somebody gets it figured out, I'd love to learn from them. It's a challenge, and there's
Mhm.
enough farmers trying it, that also, and this is where you guys come in. I want the most shade tolerant species of a plant that I can find.
Mhm.
Because when you get tall corn, and one of the other things some people don't, I found out on this also, an upright leaf on a corn plant makes a big difference. And I don't know if you guys label that way or not. That makes a big difference. But just keep trying, and when everybody gets it figured out, let us all know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, when that gets all figured out, that'll be definitely a game changer. And yeah, shade tolerance is a big thing. I always say you can find some nice tolerance. The tricky thing about it is getting things started in the shade, but if you can kind of give that interseeding, like you said, get that timed out where it's going and everything kind of gets established and grow, but then it gets shaded out a little bit, kind of might slow down a little bit, but then when you take off that corner, whatever you're interseeding into, and it just gets that sun and everything, it just speeds up and just booms after that. So, but yeah, I appreciate you joining us today, Ron. Any last words and everything before we let you go, or?
Thanks for allowing me to do this. Thanks for all the other learning I learned from the other presenters. And keep the momentum going.
All right,
Thank
we
you.
will do. We'll keep her going. So yeah, thank you. And everything, and you enjoy the rest of your day. And everyone else that's watching, if you have any question or anything, Ron had his contact information on there. Seems like a swell guy, and he'd be more than happy to talk to you and help you out there.